So I tend to do this thing where when I learn something, I tweeted about it mainly as a way of keeping track of all the things that I was learning. Like 100% selfish, a means of me knowing what was useful and what I was looking up. But then it turned out to be useful to other people, and this is my now boss in the pre-Bowtie era of his Twitter profile pic, saying like, if you want to make a non-technical contribution to this science, add data and me is a good example. And we're, some of us here are scientists, so we obviously want, hard evidence, which clearly, based on one person's blog, I'm super important. But what I would say about essentially this whole journey overall is that things that are selfish and things that are useful to other people is what I think of as the free and open source software happy place. That's actually like the origin of most open source software is somebody needed to do a thing. So they wrote code to do it. And then it turned out to be useful to other people. My own origin story is three parts. Basically, the first being basketball. I started using R around 2001, 2002 to win at fantasy basketball because I am cool. So the internet is good, but like really this is just me making things up as I went along again to be cool at fantasy basketball, which is also kind of how I ended up on Twitter. And basketball Twitter is this really interesting space where you have people who have incredibly different backgrounds and takes on data and analytics. Dean Oliver is, he's the author of a book called Basketball on Paper. He's like a big deal as far as a bunch of basketball nerds are concerned. And so like sometimes on Twitter, it's people being like, oh great, we're using this like deep learning paper to pull video and it's super cool and awesome, and being able to communicate with those types of people on Twitter is really great because you're kind of on the same wavelength. At the same time, you have a lot of people, I was given permission to show this handle, but sometimes you want to protect the people who don't know they need protecting, in case you can't read, which hopefully you all can. If you have great players, you're going to win games. If you have bad players, you're going to lose games. What does analytics have to do with it? That's a good question. You put your best analytic team out there and he rolls out his best, one of you will lose. So at best, analytics works just 50% of the time, which could also be said for dribbling basketball or shooting or, so as you can imagine, these are like really different audiences, but you kind of learn how to navigate. Luckily, I became a professional navigator among world groups as an undergraduate. I majored in science and society. So if anyone here has any questions about anything pertaining to science and or society, feel free to come up afterwards. It's now called Science and Technology Studies, and it's intensely interdisciplinary. I did my thesis work on ethical, legal, and social implications of nanotechnology. I don't know anything about that now, but like my advisors were a sociologist, a chemical engineer, and a toxicologist, which means that you're spending a lot of time talking about things that you know very little about, but also kind of communicating among people in different worlds, which turned out to be helpful in real life. This is like my favorite science and technology studies piece, and this speaks a lot to the open source world and worlds that, like many social groups that do not reproduce biologically, the experimental particle physics community renews itself by training novices, which I did double check with Hadley. That's also how the Tidyverse community renews itself. That's a joke. I'll just tell you. So kind of circling back to Hadley's comment from before, is like really nice, but everything is controversial on Twitter. Has everyone here been on Twitter? Has anyone here not been on Twitter? Yeah, so everything is controversial on Twitter. Hadley gets some flack, and then Lucy, who's a great statistician, she's like, no, like I read this as being that, she can translate technical material to a non-technical audience. So if you're non-tech, she's fire emoji, 2 girls, and a trophy, which is kind of what I aspire to be in life. And I'm kind of a word nerd, so there's a term for this that I like a lot, and it's called exoteric, which means understandable by outsiders or the general public. And another way of putting that is that I deal with a lot of things that are kind of half in English, half in squiggly. And I view kind of my goal as communicating across the English squiggly divide. Not my whole goal in life, but that is what I do a lot. So how do I do this? I do data science thing. It's not a verb yet, but it will be, which basically looks like this, right? Tidyverse, I'm the Tidyverse Dev Advocate, so you can tell I used it. Fancy algo data model, hooray! You're done. But I'm not a parent myself, but I imagine that every parent does face that moment where a child asks, like, Mom, where do your data come from? And you say, like, science. You think it's taken care of, but like kids always have follow-up questions, and a lot of people who weren't trained in the hot field of science and society may think of that being, a dispassionate reporting of the facts, objectivity, no judgment. But we know some things about science and about data, and it actually occurs in context. Shocking. Insert our trigger here, because I get nervous if I don't have an art trigger like every few seconds. So, what does doing science look like? What does gathering data look like? That's always something, especially in terms of journalism and the easy availability of science these days, I think we always have to think about. So sometimes science looks like this. It's a couple that, I guess they were good or whatever, like they got a Nobel Prize in medicine, they're in a lab doing cool things. Like sometimes it looks like this, where you've like been on a boat for 2 months and are on like a rotating watch system and like are doing so poorly at titrating oxygen that you have to wear bunny ears. So yeah, that's what I mean by context. But I also think, aside from that, we have to think about these larger socio-technical systems in which we operate. So a lot of times you'll see analyses, because the data is available, of crime heat maps, which people tend to interpret as where crime is occurring. Incidentally, those heat maps are where people are being arrested for crime. So that, in terms of like journalistic responsibility, I always think that like thinking about your data source is always a good thing to do. What about R? Should we gonna talk about it? I'm super into it. I do very important analyses, that change lives. If you haven't seen Archer, basically most of the things on here are from there. Citation Archer. Yeah, my favorite tools are RStudio and the Tidyverse. I actually was like a very late adopter of RStudio because it didn't exist when I first started using R. Has anyone here used the Tidyverse before? A couple of you? Cool, great. Then I'm glad I have this slide. Yeah, so the Tidyverse is an opinionated collection of R packages designed for data science, and they share an underlying design philosophy, grammar, and data structures. And what that ends up meaning is basically we have human-centered tools that are composable, meaning you're able to join one function after another. And because they share this design philosophy, it means that learning how to use one piece makes it easier to learn how to use another. So, I feel like no R talk about the Tidyverse can exist without this diagram. But yeah, so like basically learning how to use TidyR and dplyr, which help you wrangle data, that grammar is going to come over to ggplot2, and you're going to be able to use that as well. So even though R definitely does have a learning curve, the Tidyverse makes that not only slightly gentler, but it makes it you have a better ROI, in my opinion. But basically, big picture, import, tidy, transform, model, we have all this going on, and in here it's understanding. So if you're telling a story, you have data, you might start with the data, or you might start with a question and find the data. And this part's a cycle for a reason, right? It's not like you import your data and have a story and run with it. You have to kind of interrogate it, and it's a process that is in some ways never ending, but the nice thing about R, and certainly about Tidyverse, is that we think of it as being a computer language for scientists. So in terms of like the level of abstraction at which you're thinking, I don't know C++, but here's kind of the C++, like the distance between that and machine language there. R is a little bit further, well, whatever, we'll skip into it. It's closer to the brain. The Tidyverse hopefully kind of fills that gap. Jenny Bryan, who I work with, has a lot of great wisdom. You know what, I have to go back. This is like my favorite scene in Apollo 13 ever. And I think of kind of, there's data wrangling and there's also data rectangling. Kind of, you have this data and you have to fit it into a data frame. Or if you do fit it into a data frame, you can use all these other tools and do all this modeling and cool stuff. And R is really known for that. It's, I think that's why a lot of people first get into R. I know for me, I thought it was fantasy basketball software. And then I was working with a nonprofit in Boston and doing all these demand analyses. And I was like, oh wow, there's a package in R that does like American Community Survey data. How helpful, not to my basketball team, but. And more than just that, with things that have been developed in the past few years, I think of it as being kind of a tool for idea rectangling or idea wrangling. And one of the best tools for that is R Markdown. Has anyone here used R Markdown before? Awesome. I am a huge fan of R Markdown. And what it allows you to do is write code, prose, and output all in the same place. And you're able to turn that output into almost anything, whether it be HTML, PDF, a PowerPoint presentation, a book down is a thing now, a poster. And the nice thing about it is that as you're doing science and you're kind of tangling with these things, you can write words, which are the words and the ideas that you're going through, write the code, see the output in one place, and that kind of allows you to have an easier time with this iterative cycle of idea and data wrangling. I do like to have a caveat here that I'm a big fan of, I'm in the back pocket of notebook and pen industrial complex. I think you should like never let your ideas be limited by the tools that you're using. What I write here is not actually important, it's just really small. But I'm a big fan of like letting yourself always have the space to like write things out in pen and paper. And that can be incredibly messy and layered, but a lot of times it's things that are really hard to do on a computer. I'm like a pen and paper advocate. They should be paying them. So, upping your storytelling. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but first I'm going to tell you kind of a tragic tale. So in 2017, my friend Elijah and I made this visualization of the entirety of Archer, which we literally transcribed the entire show. So as you can see here, and I'll jump out to the application itself, but it's really complicated. Here during an episode, you can see all the different characters, and you can zoom out in all these different ways. We have these like radial splats. It's a geometry that Elijah, who's the data visualization engineer at Netflix, like made up. We spent months and months on this. Like to tell you how many GIFs I made. Here I have the Albanian ambassador, the Albanian attaché, and the undersecretary of Albania. I think one of them audibly puts down a 4. So yeah, like a lot of hard work, and then we posted it on Reddit, which like shouldn't be your measure of success in life. We did get like 8 whole points for it, so that was pretty great. Yeah, it was kind of a lot, but we enjoyed doing it. But it definitely was like not a success among other people. And Elijah did a really useful right up first, like speaking to the process. This is really true. Like these days, when you tell someone you did something by hand, it's like you're telling them you enjoy thrash metal. If you enjoy thrash metal, that's okay. I transcribed record by hand. Yeah, like we had all of this theory around it, like the geometries made sense, like we're using character order, you have these sub-scenes that like, you know, it coordinates with the beats in the show, entry gives, like, we didn't think of this lightly, we like thought it through pretty intensely, and we had some annotation in there, we had like kill count, but lesson learned, oh, shoot. That hurts words. We really hadn't made it with an audience in mind. We made it with ourselves in mind, and we were happy to explore Archer for many hours. But there's no curation. Like, despite the fact that we're doing this major visualization, we really weren't doing any storytelling at all. We left that part up to you. And as Elijah said here, like, we could have learned a thing or two from Krieger by like cleaning up after ourselves and clearing the old browser history. So, to put that in non-Archer terms, which my parents ask me to do all the time, it's very annoying. You know, infinite exploration puts the onus of storytelling on the user. You're saying, here, go wild. And that's actually really easy to do these days, and it feels really exciting. And it can be, and you have certain users for whom that's a good idea. But again, you're leaving kind of the narrative up to them. So when I read the title of this talk yesterday and figured it should have something to do with storytelling, I was thinking about, you know, like what are big ideas in terms of like upping your storytelling game? And I'm going to go through these with some code that I am not online, so I don't know the link to, but you guys will all have at one point. So like 4 big ideas: steal, borrow from the best. Everyone in open source is doing this. We're all using code that other people have written and adapting it. Start off from something that you like and run with it. Annotate like a boss. I'm not sure how a boss annotates, but use it frequently. If you're annotating, like if you're not annotating something, or you're not using titles well, you're denying your reader your expertise. A lot of times people are like, the data speak for themselves or itself, depending on how you conjugate data. But data doesn't really speak for itself to everyone. Third one, create cranky code. If you follow me on Twitter, like a big thing that I do is write obnoxious error messages to myself, which makes me refactor my code. But I also don't spend a lot of time on like high-level abstraction. If you're going to be working with something and iterating on it, it's okay to hard code things. Just remind yourself why. And then I think this is the biggest one, is that get good at getting help. All right, so now let's see if I can jump into nothingness. No, how about, sorry. Mirror displays. I do not want to go on the Wi-Fi network. That's very sweet. That's really small, right? Is that legible in the back? Yes? Just like a head nod with anything. Thank you. I also like when people nod their heads because I know words are coming out of my mouth. So, upping your storytelling game with help from tools that other people already made. So, I'm just going to kind of give you, not like a whirlwind tour, but a quick tour of some of the tools that I use. I don't spend most of my time storytelling with data. The exception of one area, which is shockingly basketball. But I think that these tools do apply to other things. So these are some things I've been using recently and I think are really great, especially for rapid iteration and for fitting things in a pipeline. So the Tidyverse, as I've mentioned, kind of has the whole kit and caboodle. Blue, which I'm going to show you as we go there. Harbor themes, that's a guy named Bob Rudis, Harbor Master on Twitter, which is what I've called him in real life, which is awkward. He has some great themes, which are also really well written, and I really like to adapt from those. GG Pomological is not going to look as cool as it does in real life because I'm not on the internet, but really shows you where you can go in terms of styling some of your graphics. And then for interactive charts, I am super into this tool called HighCharter, which is an R wrapper for the HighCharts API, and it just works really well with Tidyverse pipelines. So, first I'm grabbing data. I know that's very exciting for everyone. Yeah, so for me, like the very first thing I do when I get new data is I use this package called skimr. Let me see if my little image works. And that was actually made at an ROpenSci. It's a very cool organization. It was made at an unconf, and what it allows you to do is it gives you summary statistics and also like what's missing with your data, and it groups them by variable type, which if you're dealing with a big data set is super helpful because for something that's categorical, or a character, it's not going to have a mean. So here you can see that it also tells you what variables are in your data, which like if you're working with census data, like that might be a lot of variables. And because I zoomed in, it's not all going to line up in one place, but it also gives you these cool little histograms, which are a nice quick way of looking at distribution, of seeing if something is wonky. So for example, right here, you see that bimodal, not even bimodal, that like super extreme 2-bar thing. I'm sorry that the thing is not wide enough, but that's because the ID for the players is numeric. You're gonna convert it to characters. But that's the type of thing that like could take you a very long time to figure out if you weren't looking at something like this. So the cool thing about visualization in general is that it takes advantage of what humans are good at. Yeah, go ahead.
So what does it do when you have factors in the column?
Yeah, so, when you have factors in the column, so it will give you summary statistics as though they were characters, but it separates them out. And you can customize it so that it gives you different types of summary statistics, but it is going to treat them as categorical initially. The documentation, which I've linked to, and all these things is really, really good. And it does deal with those well. And it's also really helpful because it tells you if you have factors in there, which for those of you who haven't used R much, one of the nice things about the Tidyverse is it does not convert your strings to factors by default, which will trip you up many times. Factors are also really useful sometimes in defense of factors. Yeah, so me, I like to skim first. And then comes kind of munging as needed. The specifics are not that important. What I do want to show you here is that I'm starting to use glue. And the neat thing about glue, there are many other ways to do this, including base R paste or something like that, but the thing that glue allows you to do is use this curly brace notation to refer to a variable that's in your data frame or a variable that you've created. And it's just easier to read. We're all about literate programming in the Tidyverse, and it's, first of all, nice to be able to read it for yourself, but also if anyone else is looking at your code, having a name like, well, bref URL is not as helpful, but like having name player in there as opposed to like pasto, like df, $, whatever, that's sweet. Jim has to me at that. Here I'm messing around with front port and back port, and then I'm doing here like just an initial visualization, right? So I wanted to see what the PER, that stands for player efficiency rating. Was not able to remit this because of the internet, but I would have a side note on it. But it's like not looking too hot, right? This is very like, oh, nice to use the ggplot, and then did nothing else for me. There are good defaults, especially if this is being recorded. Like the defaults on ggplot are excellent. Kelly, good job. But like it's not looking that polished. And I do want to point out that here I'm using a package that I'm going to mention again in the slides. It's called Distill. And it was recently ported to R by J.G. Allaire, who is the founder of RStudio and a couple other people. And one of the things I really like about it is that it makes it really easy to do things like this. Having asides and footnotes you can hover over really kind of allows you to have more of a conversation with your reader or with yourself. As someone who talks to herself, not infrequently, I really like doing that. And it also, like, it draws the eye in a different way. Much to my chagrin, people don't read that much anymore. Rumor has it. Yeah, so I want things to look a little better. So enter, glue, and harbor themes. Harbor themes, again, by Bob Brutus. And here what I'm doing is, where's the spotlight? It's less spotlighty. Is down here, I'm just applying a theme to the exact same thing I did up there. And what I'm doing with glue here is that I am, as I note here, basically because I update these charts regularly, I'm using glue, which is the prefix name of the package, to put the date in there. Which again, like literally is for me so that I know the last time I ran this. But also if you're publishing something and you're updating it, it's really nice to have in there. I'm a big fan of glue for charts. And of my, not like sniffing it or anything, but just whatever. Yeah, so you can see like I'm kind of doing the same deal here. It's a little stylish, noting some things. Great job, Mara. And then we're like, oh, cool, those are great, but let's look at something that might be more interesting. Like, so in basketball, they play offense and defense, and I did once give a talk in the Netherlands, and they were like, no one here knows what basketball really is. And I was like, I should rewind. Yeah, so this box plus minus score. Like, so let's say I want to look at, people do look at those two things together, and you're like, oh, great, a scatter plot of some players are good at this and some are not. Like, I made a graphic, but it doesn't really tell you that much. And you might be interested in things in there. Yeah, so it's pretty lame. So for more detail, I am very into this package called GG Highlight. It's not part of the Tidyverse. The ggplot has a ton of extension packages, which I have a ton of resources on. But I, again, highly recommend taking advantage of other people's work. And what GG Highlight allows you to do is to use a predicate function, which means that you're saying, like, I want to highlight or label or do whatever with the data points that meet a certain criteria. So in this case, I made a little helper function, which I then use later. I don't use it here. To say, like, fine, I'm gonna grab the top 10 players in some given stat, and I want to highlight those. So things are getting a little more complicated here, so I'm going to talk through this one a little bit. You can see that there's a thing happening down at the bottom. So I don't know why I didn't use the helper function, but I didn't. At this point, I'm using GG Highlight to say, I want the players that are in the top 10 that I just made up. I'm going to label them with the name player. You can go ahead and style how you want those labels to look. So GG Highlight uses another package that I'm going to show you again in a minute called GG Repel, which places the type repels text, which if you've ever put a bunch of text on a plot without having it algorithmically repelled from itself, this is super nice that it does that. Otherwise, you're dragging things around, and then, like, if you make a new chart, you have to do it again. I'm also starting to add some more annotation that isn't necessarily words. I'm adding like, okay, here are the zero axes, so you can see who's in the negative, who's in the positive. And because I made that little helper function, I was able to say like, okay, I am gonna highlight the top 10 box plus minus. And again, it's not the greatest chart in the world. I'm not telling some elaborate story, but this is a lot more informative than the one above. If you're into basketball, it starts to say nothing, sort of. Yeah, so predicate functions will not always hit everything you want to see. So like, you don't necessarily want to see just the top 10. Sometimes you're like, oh, who's this player down here? Or, you know, I want to highlight this other dot, which I find using highcharter and interactive visualization in general to actually be a really nice way to figure out what I do want to annotate. Yeah. So, and then also another cool distill thing is that I don't know, I'm super hyped on distill right now. Is that you can change the layout of charts to look different, which really breaks things up in terms of reading a narrative. I think Medium does the same thing. This makes it super easy to do. So here I'm using a code chunk parameter. I will give you all this code that says L body outset. So this next chart is a little bit wider. Really? And then we can go even wider by using layout equals L hyphen page, which this is a terrible chart, but it's so wide. And there's even one that goes all the way across, but it didn't work for these, so I didn't use it. All right, so that's GG highlight and harbor themes. Don't worry, I'll show them to you again. I'm just going to do a quick thing with GT, which is a new package by another colleague of mine at RStudio, Rich Iannone. I've never heard him say his last name aloud. I will make sure to look into that. And GT stands for the grammar of tables. The cool thing about GT is that it's typable, meaning, for those of you who have not used Tidyverse Dev, that modulo greater than sign, modulo we call a pipe, and the way that you read that aloud is essentially like and then. If you've seen Dude, Where's My Car, like you can read it like a scene from that movie. I basically speak in like 90s cinematographic analogy. Yes, so you're saying, okay, so I have this whole data frame with all of those summary statistics that I told you up top, but I really just want to look at a couple of them. And rather than having to make a new data frame and pair through it to make a nice table, I can literally do that right in here. I'm saying like, okay, I just want to select the name of the player, ratios of some stuff. I want to arrange them in a certain way. I just want the top ones. And the nice thing about the GT package is you can use HTML or Markdown or something, or if you want to use LaTeX in there, you could, but I feel like if you're using that in GT, you probably are just using LaTeX. So it's like a different crowd. Yeah, so there's very easy formatting. And the nice thing is that you're always referring back to the part of the data table, you'll see I refer back to them, by their original name in the data frame. So I don't have to go back and think about what I called them so that my table would look pretty, which sometimes involves something like a space, which is incredibly annoying to deal with. Okay, backticks are not that annoying to deal with, but it's kind of annoying. So you're able to refer back to the original data frame at any given time. You wouldn't normally print the code because it's long and ugly, but you can do some pretty cool things. So the details, not that important, but I'm going through, I'm transforming the text, like I'm making a link here. Here I'm using text transform with a web image, which again, like might not sound that impressive if you're used to like copying and pasting things together. That is not that easy to do in a table in R most of the And then also, it allows you to do source notes and footnotes. And that is incredibly helpful because it all fits together nicely, and also that can be the type of thing that's really easy to lose track of if you're writing something longer form, and it allows you to, well, you'll see in a second, it annotates it in a really helpful way. So I'm adding more footnotes, like explaining really important things like what box plus minus is. And you end up with something like this. So I have little tiny NBA players, thrilling. I added I added a note to the title, which is then down here. So I restricted this to players with 500 plus minutes. And then I can actually add notes to either individual cell values or those column titles, which, again, getting these things placed is not normally easy. And tables are a visual display of quantitative information. It's not necessarily the best, but they are really useful. So this all basically, and my source note, all goes down to the bottom in a really structured way. I'm a really big fan of GT. And you can even define your own glyphs. You can use numbers if you're a normal human being, or you can use glyphs because you're like obsessively following the Oxford style guide. Yeah, so we're kind of, I think I'm drawing time. Anyway, so I do that sometimes. High charter. Joshua Kuntz did that. It is basically an interactive visualization that has the same grammar as ggplot. So you can give it a tooltip, subtitle, credits, and you can add themes to them. So this one is theme 538. That seems like a thing that like every visualization library, they're like, oh, we want a 538 theme. So here, like if I'm looking at the same data I was before, and for example, like that's Steph Curry, who wasn't in the top 10, but maybe I want to point that out. So I can go in, I can even add Steph Curry's name as a predicate function. I'm going to go through these quickly because I bet there's more fun stuff to see. And tragically, the internet isn't working, so you can't see just how cool the backgrounds to GG Homological are, but it like ends up looking like it's from the olden days, which maybe nobody else thinks that's cool, but people get really excited about it on Twitter, which I know is real life. Yeah, and all of this made possible by, and one thing I highly recommend doing, even if you're not showing it to anyone, is putting your session info somewhere. That way, if you have to go back and debug, you got your session info. Hooray. All right, how do I close this? So, since I'm tight on time, I'm going to hop back into Keynote. So those are some sweet tools for upping your storytelling game. Blue, I mentioned this one pretty extensively. Oh, did not even mean to progress, but yeah, Distill, it has awesome documentation. It allows you to do a bunch of different things, including customize it, but like little things about it, like the fact that your Twitter handle is a parameter you can put in. So when anyone goes to share the link, your Twitter handle is in it. As somebody who shares a lot of people's articles, that is something I really recommend you do, because I spend a long time. Frank Harrell, who's like an elderly gentleman at Vanderbilt who made like a very early R package, I once attributed his package to Pharrell Williams. So, and he is on Twitter, for Frank Harrell and Pharrell. So anyway, put your Twitter handles on things, or else you'll end up in awkward situations. Yeah, so like your figures can have different layouts, table formatting, equations. I know everyone loves a good equation. That doesn't turn anyone off from reading an article. Code blocks, appendices, and more. All right, so this is another package I wanted to mention that I like a lot. It's by Alicia Shep, and it's called GG Labeler. Yes, doing everything in code is awesome, but sometimes you literally just want to highlight a point. This is actually a widget that you can run right in RStudio, and you can click on the dots and label the dots that you're clicking on. then go on and theme this however you want. I love this package, especially when I'm using something I don't know that well. And I highly recommend it, especially if you're new to R, because it actually, down at the bottom, it's going to give you the code. So you can learn code from these GUIs. GG Repel, which I mentioned, which is by Camille Slokowski, deals with text placement. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. A lot of packages use it under the hood. Oh. Well, whatever. You saw that those labels did not overlap. GT, this is kind of the grammar of a GT table. The documentation for this is awesome because Rich has Sketch, so all of his documentation looks cool. Some unfair advantage. This is another clicky widget that you can use in RStudio to, again, interactively drag and drop to make charts, but at the same time, it's giving you the code at the bottom. That's one of the things I like a lot about using the IDE is even when you're able to click to get something, it's giving you the code, so you're learning as you're clicking. And in the last 6 minutes, I'm going to quickly talk about getting help, which I find to be important. Personally, I need help a lot. Yeah. So our studio community has been around for about 1.5 years, and it's one of many places to get help on the internet. Stack Overflow is awesome. Stack Overflow is very oriented towards a unique question and answer pair, which when you're a newcomer, it can be hard to know whether or not that is the case. Our studio community is built on Discourse, which Jeff Atwood, who was one of the founders of Stack Overflow, also made Discourse. So if you're wondering if they have two different purposes, the answer is yes, or else you wouldn't have made them. Very good reasoning. This is what it looks like. Asking good questions is hard, and the nice thing about Discourse is that we can help you ask better questions. There's no like complete answer, not complete answer. You can go back and forth. When I read this quote, I was really taken with it, not just on a symbolic level, but like, it doesn't work is an actual GitHub issue I've read. So what is a useful way to, ask for help? Give a problem description, expected behavior, and a minimal reproducible example. That sounds helpful, right? Like on GitHub, give them formatting, like we're golden, it's gonna be great, people are just gonna follow this. Here we have steps taken so far. I tried, and in their defense, they're not wrong. It's just not what I needed in order to help them. Granted, like in another situation, I can imagine, if somebody's like, oh, like my internet broke recently, and I just went to my garage and started taking pictures of things, being like, is this the internet? I actually did find it, but only after turning on sprinklers in my yard. Yeah, the old Popper quote. It's impossible to speak in such a way that you cannot be misunderstood. Writing prose about code is just inefficient, right? So this person is doing something on their computer, then they're thinking about it, then they're turning their idea about what just happened on their computer into words, and then they're writing it, and then she's deparsing it, reading it, thinking about it, and then writing back what she thinks should happen. Like, if you were programming these people, you would refactor your code. But it can feel really hard, right? So to the people who are asking, it feels like we're being withholden. Citation and Arrested Development. But in reality, what it feels like is I don't understand the question and I won't respond to it, but not so Lucille Bouvier. Enter the magic of reprex, which is a portmanteau of reproducible example. There is literally no package other than the reprex that I would definitely get a tattoo of a head sticker for if it made people use it. I swear this has the greatest return on investment of any package you will use. The reprex raison d'etre is help me help you. It allows you to have conversations about code with code. So there are the keys to reprexcellence, that's a non-sanctioned portmanteau that I use, is code that actually runs, even if it's running and showing you an error, code that doesn't have to be run, because you can see the output, might be obvious. Like just in reading a gazillion errors, if something says like xcrun in it, I happen to know now that you have to install your command line tools. Most people, like sometimes somebody can see output and know things. That's the one thing I know, so I just want to feel cool. But code that can easily be run. So like not a picture of your spreadsheet that I then have to like look at and type in myself and like be in a bad mood by the time I'm responding. Enjoy this blank slide of keystroke excellence. So this is what happens with RepRex. You go and you can either copy your code and put it on your clipboard and run RepRex, which will then generate here is markdown that will then be on your clipboard. So literally after you run this, you can then go to GitHub, Stack Overflow, community, whatever, and on your clipboard you have all of this, including the images. They're uploaded to Imager. If you are in China and doing this, you're behind something called the Great Firewall. It took me like 30 back and forths to figure this out. I did not know it. I'm so grateful for the person who pointed that out. I thought RepRex was broken. It wasn't. You just can't use Imager. I guess I wanted to give a second example of it, which I am. Oh, that's because this is how I do it. I highlight and then I RepRex selection. It seems less magical to me for some reason. But again, having those images in there, you're going to get help much faster. So, yeah, insert thank you slide. If you guys have any questions, I do have all of this material, including the code for you, and an entire other document just showing you a bunch of cool themes. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. Advice for real-time data, putting into things like the caption with the curly brackets.
Yeah, so streaming data itself, WebSockets, like that is not perfect in R yet, but in terms of like real-time data, now you can use dplyr and with dbplyr and it translates into SQL, which even if you know SQL, it's nice not to have to jump back and forth. So for real-time data, I very much suggest using that, but I also suggest using Glue for summary statistics. So for example, you can say like, and the mean was this, and that is great, especially if you're handing it off as a deliverable, and that's changing. Or if you're running like a dynamic website, I'm sorry, I can't think of anything but basketball, like win odds on a March Madness game, and it's pulling on a cron job. Something like Glue is great for that because you can have it in the title, and it's updating whenever you're updating the site or when the play-by-play changes. I know things other than basketball exist, I just can't think of any right now. Yeah?
Could you, you know a lot of the different user communities, and I'm wondering how you see journalism
I love Storybench is literally the only email newsletter that I get. And like, my mom's emails often end up in spam, but Storybench does not. Which speaks both to the quality of her emails and Storybench. But yeah, so I think data journalism is like incredibly important for all of this, and also is some of the best feedback on the tools that we're using. So, especially in terms of, there's recently, did Sharon Mathis come here?
No, we just interviewed her. Yeah.
Okay, well, she's great. She just wrote a really great book on art for data journalism. The BBC just made a cookbook for what they did, and then The Economist this morning, I retweeted it, but you can just look for it from The Economist. You don't have to go to my, just did, yeah, they were like, our crimes against data. So I think that the data journalism community is crucial to all this, and especially with the tools that we make. I think that's one of the best parts.
Sorry, correct.
Yeah, sorry.
You guys almost done?
I'm totally done.
Totally done.
That was the last thing I was saying.
All right.